Life in prehistory was a relentless meat grinder of pure survival. It was an era of paralyzing cold and absolute darkness, where a saber-toothed tiger or a cave bear waited in the shadows for the slightest mistake to strike. However, the most agonizing threat of those nights did not roar, nor did it have immense claws. It weighed less than 3 milligrams. Humanity's first great war was not fought with spears against mammoths, but against mosquitoes. In those days, mosquitoes did not just transmit diseases, they were an unbearable plague. To face them, the early humans created their own chemical defense: smoke and mud. Before entering damp areas, hunters would cover their entire bodies in a thick layer of clay. When dried under the sun, this crust formed an impenetrable armor against bites. At night, they would burn damp brushwood and toxic leaves in the campfire to create dense smoke screens that chased the swarms away. Sleeping inside a cave meant breathing in smoke all night long, a harsh but necessary price to pay to avoid waking up covered in welts. In addition to the insects, the ice spared no one. To avoid freezing to death, ingenuity made all the difference. Neanderthals manufactured a super strong glue by boiling birch bark at precise temperatures, which they used to fasten stone points to their spears. A mistake of just a few degrees in the fire would ruin the mixture completely. They were true engineers of the Ice Age. In this savage world, pain was a daily occurrence. A broken tooth back then meant an almost certain infection. The food of that era was full of sand and bone fragments. Chewing raw roots wore down teeth until the nerve was exposed. Faced with a split fang, healers applied the world's first dental filling, a mixture of beeswax and raw honey. This blocked out the cold air and calmed the pain. Best of all, the honey and propolis acted as natural antibiotics, eliminating bacteria and preventing the infection from reaching the brain. Medicine reached even rougher extremes with trepanation. If someone suffered from severe headaches, epilepsy, or a blow from an animal, the solution was to drill into their skull. They used very sharp stone knives to scrape the bone until a hole was opened to relieve the pressure, all while the person was completely conscious. The surprising thing is that many fossil skulls show that the bone actually grew back around the cut. This proves that they survived these surgeries and continued on with their lives. When it comes to food, the diet was based on taking advantage of any available resource, and it often began with the leftovers of other predators. The great superfood of the era was bone marrow. Humans would wait for cave lions or giant hyenas to finish hunting, before approaching the carcass to crack open the bones using heavy rocks. That raw fat found inside was the caloric fuel that ultimately caused the human brain to grow. When big game hunting failed, the quick fallback option was large larvae, beetles, and caterpillars. Pure, easy-to-catch protein. To cook tough meat without having pots, they invented a brilliant method. They used animal stomachs as pouches, filled them with water and meat, and then dropped red-hot stones straight from the campfire inside. The water boiled instantly, cooking up a nutritious broth. They also discovered alcohol by consuming heavily ripened fruit fermented in the sun, searching for a brief moment of euphoria in the midst of such a harsh reality. Even clothing and hygiene were matters of survival. Having too much body hair was a risk because it became infested with ticks, and it gave an animal or a rival tribe something to grab onto during a fight. Using shells or sharp obsidian stones, they would pluck or scrape the hair from their bodies. Clothing didn't consist of simple hides thrown over the shoulders either. They used fine bone needles to sew custom-fit garments, employing animal tendons as thread. They made boots lined with dry grass and heavy coats. If a single seam was left loose, the freezing wind would get in, and the person could die of hypothermia in a matter of hours. It was in the midst of all this natural harshness when wolves began to approach the fire of the camps. People started throwing them leftovers in exchange for the wolves growling if a saber-toothed tiger approached in the dark. This deal of exchanging food for protection was one of the most important pacts in history. That is how the dog was born, the very first alarm system and humankind's greatest ally in the wild. Those who survived the ice, infections, and predators were not fearful creatures, but brilliant and resilient people who mastered their environment through sheer ingenuity. Every time we apply honey to a wound, chase away insects with smoke, or watch a dog guard a house, we are repeating the customs of the toughest people to ever walk the earth.